Hey guys, Kaiosho here. So this is actually an episode of Ramblatory Nonsense that I recorded in March of 2014. So it's been well over a year since then. Uh, I don't know exactly why I never posted it. Maybe I just never got around to it. Also, I sound like really tired and just worn out. At that time, I was not very in a very good condition physically, and you can probably tell in some of my last few videos around that time too. Um, so yeah, I talk really quietly, really slowly, deliberately. Uh, but yeah, it's still, I feel like a worthwhile thing to post. So I'm going to post it here. Um, and then there's going to be a second, also lost episode that I'm going to post directly after this one. That is about the Bioshock Infinite DLC. It's about Burial at Sea episode 2 and my thoughts on it. And I think I haven't listened to that one yet, but I think that one goes into spoilers, and if it does, I will warn you ahead of time in that one. But this one is mostly just a straight up review and rambling about Dishonored, the first story based DLC, Knife of Dunwall, and a little bit of the Brigmore Witches. But yeah, the first part is just basically a review of Dishonored. Then the second part, I talk about Bioshock, Bioshock Infinite, my experience playing those, and sort of kind of a comparison between them, and just kind of rambling about why I like one more than the other, and why Bioshock 1 was kind of ruined for me ahead of time for several reasons. So, anyways, yeah, that's what this episode's about. In the next one, I'll have another intro like this telling you what it's about after I listen to it, because I haven't heard it since then, but it was recorded just a few days after this one. So, yeah, anyways, and I might as well just pass it on to my past self. Hello, past self. How are you? How are you doing, past self? Okay, here he is. Here I am.
I don't have any specific topics. I mean, I have a couple topics I want to talk about, but I'm just going to be rambling, even more so than my other ones probably. So I won't hold it against you if you don't end up listening all the way through, or even much at all. So yeah, right. So I recently replayed Bioshock Infinite, um, and then I played Burial at Sea Episode 1, which is the first main story DLC for it, and then Episode 2 is coming out in a couple days, actually. Uh, and I might talk about those in a little bit, but first, um, while I've been waiting for Burial at Sea Episode 2 to come out, I really wanted to play another similar game, and so I decided to play Dishonored. Um, I actually got Dishonored like a little while after it came out, and I wasn't really into it that much. Uh, the thing with Dishonored is, for me at least, the story is really lacking. It, um, how do I put this? They try to do some interesting things, but they kind of like half-ass it. I kind of feel sorry for the artists, the designers, the gameplay designers. Uh, Everything is top notch in the game, except for the story. It's only okay. Even okay, so let's just go with the beginning of the game. It's not a spoiler if I tell you what happens in the first couple minutes. I think it's even in the trailers, and the name refers to it, him being dishonored. But so you're this dude named Corvo who is the Lord Protector, basically the personal bodyguard for the Empress, um, and well, also for her daughter as well. And he's kind of not just the personal bodyguard, but like a constant companion for them as well. He has basically become a member of their family, sort of, to them. And at the beginning of the game, you've come back from a trip in another country, and or is it another city? I don't remember. But uh, the Empress gets assassinated right in front of you, and then you get blamed for it because. Well, anyways, it doesn't matter right now. But you don't get to spend much, if any, time with these characters. The daughter, the the daughter of the Empress. I don't know what you would call her. Princess. I don't know what when it's an empire. What do you call them? I don't know. Um, but she. You get the feeling that you're supposed to feel real affection for her. Like, that's what they intend, but you only interact with her very minimally and not for very long. Right away, you have the option of, like, playing hide and seek with her, which is not very involved and it only takes a second, and I don't know. Basically, by the time the assassination of her mother happens, you really haven't had enough time to get to know these characters at all, and you don't have much. At least I didn't have much, if any, attachment to them. And so when this horrible stuff happened, it it didn't affect me. It didn't mean anything really. And that's something that usually works for me in games. If they can do a good job of getting me, interested in these in characters, when something happens to them, it really affects me, and that's something I enjoy about story-based games. And it didn't work here. And then throughout the whole rest of the game, the same thing happens with other characters. You kind of get to know some characters, but it's hard to explain. They don't really do a good job at fleshing the characters out. Um, any of them, really. Uh, I mean, I didn't really felt like I got to know any. Maybe one character, a female character. Maybe slightly got to know her, but not really, just kind of superficially. I don't know. And she wasn't even a major character, really. She was just there. But with all that said, I really, really like the game. And that's weird for me. It doesn't happen that often. I'm very much into the story of games, and the story, it has to be at least good enough to make me want to keep playing. Otherwise, I don't get any enjoyment out of it. I don't have a context for things. I don't. Yeah, I don't know. But in this case, it was kind of like what happened with Far Cry 3. I enjoyed Far Cry 3's story for how just kind of weird it was and silly and just craziness, but I played Far Cry 3 for the gameplay mostly and the atmosphere. Far Cry 3 is, it's a very beautiful location, islands, tropical islands, and it's just not a fun place to be, to fool around in. And Dishonored, it's not beautiful in that kind of way. In fact, it's pretty not desolate, but pretty destroyed, kind of on the edge of being destroyed from this plague that's affected the city of Dunwall and, well, other areas. And I don't know. I like the world. I like the world. That's the thing I was saying earlier. The people that designed the world, and even like there's books and notes and things you'll find in the game that you can read. Even those are interesting and well written, and they talk about stuff that you don't really get to see in the main game so much, but it helps flesh out the world. But the actual storyline with the actual plot of the game is just meh. Now you can. The thing with Dishonored that people have talked about is you can choose how to go about the missions, and I love games that do that. I always have. But the thing is, it's a good thing and a bad thing because basically you can sneak around, you can try not to kill people if you can help it, and that the developers told everyone that's how you get the best ending. I mean, so when you go in to play it, it you feel like you have to do that, or you're gonna screw up the game. That's how I felt the first time I played when it first came out, and I think that's what kind of ruined it for me the first time. Why I didn't keep playing it. It felt like I was being forced to be a good guy and to just not have as much fun because I couldn't. I don't know. This time I decided the hell with it. I am just going to do whatever's fun. So that meant strategically sneaking up on guys and killing them, and often getting into big sword fights with several guys at once, and uh yeah. So in the game, the more killing you've done, the more trouble you've caused, the more it changes. The game reacts to it. It'll like if you're killing a lot of guys, a lot of the guards and stuff, it'll spawn more guards. There'll be more guards in the future. The rat plague is a plague that's spread by rats, and there's rats that go around the city eating dead bodies, and there's an ability where you can possess a rat, or even if you upgrade the ability to possess a human or a fish or whatever. But regardless of that, the plague, it it'll get worse. Like if there's more bodies and stuff for the rats to eat, then the plague will get worse. There'll be more rats and more craziness going on. More of the weepers, which are like the people that are really infected with the plague and aren't dead yet. They're just almost there. They're kind of zombies, but not. And then, uh, but yeah, it's all affected by how much. Well, they call it chaos. How much chaos you've created. How much you've messed with things and stuff. I don't know. And how much chaos you have also affects some elements of the story. Um, how people react to you, not just in a superficial way, like in like one of the older Elder Scrolls games. I haven't really, I don't remember much of that in Skyrim, but I didn't play a lot of Skyrim. Like in Morrowind, if you had a bad reputation or whatever, people would talk to you differently. That's not what I mean. I mean the actual scripted dialogue and stuff, cutscenes can be a little bit different depending on how you've gone about the game. If you've been high chaos, killing a lot of people, different things can happen. Not drastically different, but enough that it might warrant playing through the game more than once if you want to play it in a different play style. See, that's the thing. It's not choices like in, say, a game like Dragon Age Origins or any role-playing game like that, where your actual choices as far as dialogue and things you want to do make up the difference. No, and in this, it's how you play. It's the way you go about playing the game, and that kind of ruins it a little bit. It's good, but it's also bad. For me, it's bad because I just enjoy killing people strategically, going sneaking, but doing fun stuff like just killing people in weird ways, and I don't know. I just enjoy that, and because the mechanics for it are so good. That's something I missed out on when I played it the first time and stopped playing, was because I was trying to mostly sneak around and only kill when I had to. And when you actually decide to play with the high chaos way, the way I played now, the combat, the way the game feels is just so much better to me. Anyways, it's so much better, and but then of course the story kind of suffers for it. But that's the theory, anyways. That's why people wouldn't play that way. But actually, I kind of like the way the story uh, played out due to the things I did. And I mean, it wasn't great. None of the story, the way the story can change, or the story in general, none of it's that great. But I was satisfied with the ending of the game that I got and all that stuff. I looked up um, the other endings and some of the other stuff that could happen, and it's interesting, but I don't think it would be enough to get me to play through the game sneakily and not killing people, because it's just not that fun. It's just not that fun to play. It'd be a slog to for me to go through the game again that way. I could happily go through it again, killing people the same way I just did, but going through it the other way it would be a headache. It would be a terrible for me. So I'm probably not going to play it again. At least not that way. I might play it again in a couple of years and just play it the same way probably. But right, so I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed Dishonored. The story, it was okay, but the gameplay, the setting, the atmosphere, the abilities. I mean, having just played Bioshock Infinite again, it some of the abilities are pretty similar. I mean, a lot of these games these days are starting to do that, where you get some sort of abilities that you upgrade and things like that. And but the traversal, the getting around the environment with the blink ability, which is kind of like a short range teleport, and you can upgrade it to be a little bit further range, and everything is just, it's really fun. It's really fun. I wish they had done a bit more with the actual main plot and the characters. Still, I still liked it. It's just it wasn't as good as it had so much more potential that it kind of didn't carry through with. So I finished the game and I decided that I was going to play the DLC. There's 3 DLC. One of them is the Dunwall City Trials. I haven't played it. It's just like a mode where you do different things. You know, those kind of throwaway game modes that you get in some games that, like, yeah, go ahead and do this over and over to grind for something. I don't know. I don't usually play those things, those extra activities that don't really have much purpose. I don't usually play those, so I didn't play that DLC. I mean, I have it because it came with the game when I bought it, the pack that I bought. But the Knife of Dunwall is a it's a DLC expansion thing where you play as the guy who actually killed the Empress, the actual assassin, not because in the main game you're framed, but the actual guy, the actual assassin, you play as him. This guy named Dowd. I'm not going to go into the story or anything because it would spoil the main game and also the DLC, but because it's a DLC, you can tell that they didn't quite spend as much money on it, as far as the cutscenes at least. There's far less of the, fancy inter-level cutscenes, and instead of having more of those, you get these slideshow things like cut panel things that shows an image and he's talking over it. It works. The DLC just kind of throws you in at the beginning. It doesn't give you much of an intro or anything, and it feels kind of lame at first. And even the whole first mission just kind of feels kind of lame. But it gets better, and the story for it actually progresses, and it happens organically. Like in the main game, you're constantly in between missions going back to your base with all your people and talking to them and all that. I like when games do that, but because the plot was not that great, it kind of messed with the flow a little weirdly. Because the just story wasn't that great. I don't know how to explain it, but in this, because there's none of that going on, um, the story has to be always explained in the missions, mid mission. And there isn't a lot of story. I mean, there's a main story going on, but what's there, it works better. The storytelling methods work better, I think. Um, so I played through that the Knife of Dunwall, and then there's a sequel, direct sequel DLC to that called the Brigmore Witches, which follows right up after that one ended, and then you're still playing as Dowd. And I just started it. I haven't finished it. I haven't played much of it actually. Just played the intro, and I think I'm gonna enjoy it. But I mean, still the story's not that great. But I like being in this world, and I like. Well, in the DLCs, you get to see a bit more of the background of the world that they talked about, like in the books and stuff in the main game, like stuff with the whales and stuff. Like in the game, the whole civilization is basically powered off of not electricity but whale oil made from whale blubber. And they talk a lot in the little books and stuff about the process of getting that and stuff like that. And you actually get to see some of that in the DLC. So it makes the world feel more fleshed out. So that's cool. But overall, yeah, I really enjoyed the game, and I've enjoyed the DLC so far. It bugs me when I know a game could be so much better, but it isn't. You know, right? So I think I'm done rambling about Dishonored. So Bioshock. Uh, all the Bioshocks except for two. I'll get into that later maybe. But I was planning to do an actual comparison video, maybe even video series comparing Bioshock Infinite to the original Bioshock. Now, I bought the first Bioshock when it came out, like on release day. I had pre-ordered it and all that. And unfortunately, at that time, it was one of the few times in my life as an adult where I didn't have internet access at home. And if anyone on the PC side remembers, Bioshock had some nasty
DRM.
when it came out that you had to connect to their server and get the game authenticated. And if you uninstall, you only had a certain amount of installs, I think. And if something happened and you had to uninstall the game without being able to connect their servers to tell them that you uninstalled it, it would count. You would basically lose that one installation. It was kind of dumb. Anyways, because I didn't have internet access, I had to jump through some loopholes to try to get it to work. I was on the phone with tech support a bunch. I had to go to a library with internet access to try to get files activated, and I never ended up getting it working. And then I tried playing it again. I mean, I actually got to play it for a little bit, like a year later after that. But at that time, I'd already kind of lost interest in it. And unfortunately, a few of the main plot twist things had been spoiled to me by that point. And as you guys know, I'm very into story, and sometimes when things are spoiled, it ruins it for me. So I played about maybe 2 or 3 hours at that point, and I lost interest. I don't remember why. Probably because the atmosphere was really creepy, especially in the beginning of the game. And you know how I am with horror games. I mean, that's why I let's play them sometimes. It's because it's easier mentally if you're talking than just playing through it. I get creeped out. But so I finally decided to play it because I replayed Bioshock Infinite, and I knew the DLCs, Burial at Sea Episode 1 and 2, are back in Rapture, which is the underwater city from the first Bioshock. And I knew I really needed to play the first one in order to fully enjoy the DLCs. So yeah, I replayed Bioshock Infinite, and then I played Bioshock. And at first, I was not into it, not that much. Um, but I did get into it. Now I see why people love that game. Uh, there's a couple plot twists that, if like me, you were spoiled on them, it does kind of ruin it as far as your impression of the game afterwards. Like, a lot of people really enjoyed the game, not just for the gameplay and stuff, but because of what it did to them as far as how it made them feel from the plot twists. And I didn't have that experience, unfortunately. But the gameplay, the everything was really cool. I didn't entirely like the atmosphere that much. I don't like the dark, dank kind of atmosphere that game has. But it was a great game, really, really great game. I didn't. Some people like that game a lot more than Bioshock Infinite. They don't think Infinite's very good. That's one of the reasons I was going to do that comparison video, and I still might eventually, I don't know. But I see why, in some cases, people would like the first game more. The gameplay is more involved. There's more variety to choose from, more weapons for sure. Um, like in Bioshock Infinite, you can only have 2 weapons at a time, and in the original Bioshock, you can have like a ton. But then there's an ammo conservation problem and all that kind of stuff. But the gameplay, it was great, and the story was good in the first Bioshock. But I think because I had those things spoiled to me, it didn't have the impact that it would have. And even though I really enjoyed it, it wasn't quite as good to me as Infinite. And I think even if I hadn't had those spoiled, I still think I wouldn't have liked it quite as much as Infinite because of the atmosphere, and just the general feel of the location. Bioshock Infinite, you're almost always outside and in the bright sunlight, and it just has that nice atmosphere feel that, like, again, like kind of like Far Cry 3, where it's kind of a happy feel, even if there's tons of violence going on and crazy shit happening. Just because of the location, the setting, it feels better to me. I enjoy being there more. So, also just the story in Infinite, I think, in my opinion, is better just because of the way they did it. Like, the way you're focusing on Elizabeth and Booker, and you really get to know Elizabeth as a character and see her character progression in a really deep way that you don't get in the first Bioshock. There's really no characters in the first Bioshock that you get to know very well. I mean, there's plenty that you get to hear, like audio logs and things like that from various characters, but and you talk to them over the radio and stuff like that, or rather they talk to you, but you don't have that deep kind of connection with a character like you do in Infinite. I think, well, you do have better connections with them than you do in Dishonored, at least, but yeah. But yeah, I really like Bioshock. I love Bioshock Infinite. I when I played it this last time, I played it on easy just because I wanted to get through the story. I wanted to re-experience the story and not so much the gameplay. And the gameplay still holds up. I mean, there are parts where I feel like there's a little too much combat and not enough. I don't know. When I first played Bioshock Infinite, I felt like I kind of wished it wasn't a first-person shooter. I kind of wished it was a straight-up adventure game, and I still think it could work that way. But the gameplay in it is pretty fun. I see why some people like Bioshock, the first Bioshock's better, but Infinite, the gameplay with the sky hooks and all that kind of stuff It's pretty good. I don't I didn't like it that much the first time I played, but I think that was just because I was constantly like, "Come on, combat, get over with. I want to get back to the story," you know. And this time, since I knew what to expect, I enjoyed it more. Um, and then I played Burial at Sea Episode 1, and it was good. Interesting ending, for sure. I'm really looking forward to the next, the last Burial at Sea Episode 2, the last episode, because if you guys haven't heard by now, I'm sure you have, Irrational Games has basically closed down. Um, Ken Levine had been talking about wanting to move to like a smaller studio and have a more focused sort of very smaller scale as far as budget and things like that, but more focused kind of story based games, which I was just talking about. I think Bioshock Infinite would have been great if it had just been an adventure game, not. I don't know. I like it regardless. I love it regardless. It's a great game, but he'd been talking about that in older interviews. Like he thought maybe someday he'd like to go to a small team again and things like that. And I think the problem was Bioshock, the first one, and especially Infinite. They took so long to develop that 2K basically, I think Ken and 2K together, Ken Levine and 2K kind of came to this agreement, that a mutual sort of agreement, because they had to have to employ these people and pay them for all these years before they finish a game that's ends up being a great game and sells well, but in the meantime they're not making any money from them. Just paying out money, and I kind of understand why they'd want to cut back on that, but it's kind of frustrating for me, at least, and a lot of fans, and obviously the people that got laid off. Um, he was able to take, like, I think he said 15 of his people to this new. I guess it's a new studio that he's creating, but yeah, it's kind of bittersweet kind of thing. I hope this Bioshock Infinite Burial at Sea Episode 2 is a fitting end to the Bioshock series. I think from what they've said it's going to be, but it's kind of sad that it's going to be the last. It's going to be the last official one that Ken Levine wrote, the last canon one. See, that's the thing with me. Canon is a kind of a big deal for me in stories, in games in general, or books or anything. I never played Bioshock 2, and I might eventually, just if I get to where I'm hankering for more of that kind of gameplay and I can't get it anywhere else, I might play it. But I don't consider Bioshock 2 to be canon. Ken Levine didn't write it. He really didn't have much to do with it at all. He didn't want to do a Bioshock 2, but 2K really wanted to do it because they knew they could make money from it. So they had another one of their studios do it. There were about, I forget how many, a few people from that had worked on the first game that moved to that studio and ended up working on the second one. But in general, it's not canon. It's not Ken Levine's vision. I mean, he was the creative director and main writer and all that for the series. So if he wasn't really involved, to me, it's not. It's kind of like fan fiction. It's kind of pointless. I don't know. I'm weird about that. I know I am. I could go into that for a long time, but I'm not going to. So if it's possible that 2K will want to do another Bioshock Infinite game, or just another Bioshock game in general. Now, after Ken Levine has moved on from all that, then I might be open to the idea of playing like another Infinite, or based on that Infinite concept game, even if it's even if he's not involved and most of the team is gone and it's probably a different studio making it, just because there's no other way to get it. There is no, the canon has ended. So it's kind of like, well, pretty much any IP. If the original creator is maybe died or just stopped doing it, if someone is able to do it, then I don't have much of a problem with that. It's just when the creator is still active that it seems wrong and seems pointless. So I probably will play whatever Bioshock game ends up happening in the future, just because I enjoyed them. But and I'll probably end up playing Bioshock 2 someday, but who knows. Um, yeah, I just mostly wanted to talk about those games, Dishonored and the Bioshocks. I kind of gonna be sad when I finish episode 2 of Burial at Sea, because I kind of feel like I've gotten really attached to this universe. Um, not just the city of Columbia or the city of Rapture, but the universe in general, and especially the characters of Booker and Elizabeth, and even some of the characters like Sander Cohen from Rapture, and even like Fontaine and things like that. And it's kind of depressing to me that this is going to be over with. It's like when you have a favorite TV show that's gone on for years, and suddenly it's over, and you kind of feel like you've lost something. It's like a mourning period you go through, even though it's just a TV show or just a game. Um, it's depressing, and with games, I feel like it's at least for me, it's an even more in depth sort of immersion. Of course, I mean, you feel like you're part of the story and you're part of that world when you're in it. At least I do, and so when it's gone, it's even more depressing. It's like those people when Avatar came out. There were those articles about people that wanted to go back to that world and were sad that they couldn't live there or something. The ridiculousness. It's kind of like that, not quite to that extreme, but I'm gonna miss Bioshock for sure. Yeah, but oh, that's about all I really wanted to talk about. There might be some other stuff I'll talk about. I might record another little segment to attach to this before I post it. So you might hear that in a second here. If not, this might be the end. If it is, okay. Well, yeah.
Here's a hint. It's present day me, and that's going to be in a separate episode. So look for that if you want to watch it. Anyways, until next time, goodbye.